Operation Iron Mirage. The night Beirut lit up. At exactly 17:23 on June 5th, 2025, silence over the eastern Mediterranean shattered as four Israeli Air Force EOF-16 Sufa fighter jets received the final go-ahead for one of the boldest precision strikes of the conflict so far. Inside the lead aircraft, the pilot, call sign Falcon 1, glanced once more at the mission panel. The glowing green three-word confirmation stared back at him like a signal flare in the dark. Time to go. He tightened his harness and steadied his breath. The next 120 minutes would define not just his career, but Israel's posture in a region teetering on the edge of deeper chaos. Tonight's target, high-value installations embedded deep within the congested neighborhoods of southern Beirut. Some suspected of housing Hezbollah's logistics hubs, others intelligence flagged as clandestine drone assembly centers. Timing, precision, and stealth were everything. Preparation and launch. High stakes on Holy Night. The launch of the strike wasn't just another sortie, it was meticulously choreographed across multiple Israeli military branches. In the shadows of Ramat David Air Base, the F-16I jets, each with two 2,000-pound Raphael Spice 2,000 glide bombs, had been on standby since early afternoon. Ground crews worked with clinical speed, confirming electronic warfare systems, jamming pods, fuel levels, and GPS calibration. The mission coincided with the eve of a major Islamic celebration, and intelligence officials had debated for hours whether to proceed. But the window was tight. Surveillance had confirmed that the suspected bunkers were active, and the opportunity wouldn't last. By 1726, all four aircraft were airborne, screaming skyward in a staggered takeoff that concealed their numbers from casual radar sweeps. Their course curved gently northwest, hugging international air corridors to mask their approach beneath layers of civilian traffic. But these jets weren't passengers. They were carrying weapons of surgical destruction. Targets in the shadows, Beirut's southern veins. The city of Beirut, like many cities in the Middle East, is layered with history and secrets. Israel's intelligence units, along with international satellite data, had compiled a comprehensive strike list that included 8 specific targets. They were scattered across the southern districts of Hadath, Harat Reik, and Burj al-Barajneh, locations that had seen years of covert fortification by non-state groups under civilian camouflage. Each pilot was assigned 2 structures. Each building, according to the data, was allegedly linked to Hezbollah's intelligence, logistics, or drone technology efforts. These weren't random hits. This was methodical disassembly. The air crews were warned. If you miss a release window by 5 seconds, the whole operation could unravel. Social media as a weapon, 60-minute countdown. At 1742, 60 minutes before the bombs were scheduled to fall, Israeli military spokesperson Avichai Adri took to social media. No cryptic messages, just blunt warnings. Satellite photos were posted on X, formerly Twitter, and Telegram, with red circles around buildings. The message was unmistakable. Evacuate. You have 1 hour. This wasn't merely humanitarian compliance. It was tactical. Israeli analysts would use the resulting evacuation footage, traffic patterns, and behavioral shifts to cross-verify target intelligence. Which buildings emptied first? Which saw frenzied activity? Which remained untouched? Every movement added data to the war machine. Meanwhile, above 28,000 feet, the F-16As cruised in holding patterns, guided by encrypted tactical frequencies, their pilots scanning real-time drone footage fed into their helmet-mounted displays. The city below shifted under their gaze. A living, breathing intelligence map in motion. The Raphael Spice 2000, Israel's flying brain. Hanging beneath each wing of the Sufa was Israel's answer to precision warfare. The Spice 2000. More than a bomb, it was a technological marvel.
Equipped with 3 redundant guidance systems, GPS, inertial navigation, and electro-optical scene matching. It could navigate in GPS-denied environments and even identify targets based on visual memory. As the pilots waited, their targeting pods scoured the ground, Each aircraft carried an image bank uploaded with high-resolution photos of the target zones. Every rooftop, courtyard, and alley rendered in pixel-perfect clarity. At 1818, with the hour elapsed and civilian warning complete, Falcon 1 gave the final command: strike package, commit, impact, 4 bombs, 4 silent shadows. In near-perfect synchronization, each pilot released their first bomb. The acoustic sensors in the jets recorded a clean drop, and the F-16s lurched slightly upward, 2,000 pounds lighter. The Spice 2000 sprang to life mid-air. Deploying their foldable wings, they transitioned from free-falling steel to autonomous projectiles. Cameras activated, GPS locked, INS corrected, and the optical memory began matching Beirut's nighttime skyline to its preloaded blueprint. Inside one of the bombs, the AI algorithm scanned rooftops, traced distinctive heat signatures from basements, and ignored deliberate countermeasures like painted camouflage. Lebanese electronic warfare units tried flooding GPS with false signals, but the bomb's eyes couldn't be fooled. The final target lock occurred at just 1,000 feet. The Spice guided itself between buildings, banked slightly left, and with a robotic elegance, plunged straight through the rooftop of a 5-story building. Inside, the warhead, delayed fuse, deep penetration, exploded 2 floors below ground, collapsing the structure from within. Secondary impacts: Beirut trembles. 3 more detonations followed within 30 seconds, all within a 2.5-kilometer radius. Each blast was calibrated to achieve maximum structural disruption while minimizing unintended casualties. The cumulative shockwaves caused localized seismic readings. Glass shattered a kilometer away. Civil defense sirens howled. Fires erupted. Yet by the time the first responders arrived, the sky was empty. The F-16s were already gone, disappearing west over the Mediterranean under a blanket of radar confusion. Sky Shield pods had jammed enemy radars with false signals, creating phantom blips that suggested entire squadrons. Phase 2, the heavy metal arrives. But this was only the beginning. At 1842, 2 Israeli F-15 IRAM jets appeared at 30,000 feet, gliding in from an entirely different vector. Unlike the Sufas, these aircraft carried the real bunker busters, GBU-28s. Each bomb weighed 5,000 pounds, with a reinforced steel casing designed to tunnel through 30 meters of earth or 6 meters of concrete before exploding. Their target was a hillside near the village of Ankun, suspected of housing a deep-buried command bunker. Satellite imagery had shown earthworks, power lines leading into empty fields, and strange heat patterns underground. Terminal velocity, from sky to fire. At 1844, the F-15s released their payloads from 35,000 feet. The bombs screamed earthward, reaching nearly supersonic speeds. At 2,000 feet, laser designators engaged, locking onto their targets. The bombs made final adjustments with tail fin actuators, guiding themselves with eerie precision. Impact came at 1845. The first GBU-28 bored 27 meters into the hillside before its warhead detonated. The second followed 2 seconds later, striking a parallel section of the suspected bunker. What followed was a subterranean nightmare. Multiple secondary explosions rocked the hillside. Munitions stores, fuel depots, and equipment went up in a chain reaction. A column of earth and flame erupted skyward. By 1847, the hillside had collapsed into a 60-meter-wide crater. Aftermath, silence, then questions. The pilots returned safely. The operation, dubbed Iron Mirage, was over in under 2 hours. But its implications would last much longer. Lebanese media reported at least 40 casualties, including several known Hezbollah operatives. The Iranian government condemned the strikes, while Western analysts scrambled to confirm the strike footage flooding social media. Back in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu praised the precision of the operation, calling it a preventive measure against terror infrastructure. International observers remained divided. Was this self-defense or escalation? But one thing was certain: the skies over Beirut would never look the same again. Operation Sky Rain. By the time the clock ticked past 1800 hours on June 5, 2025, the sky over Lebanon had begun to shift from dusk to darkness. But for the pilots of the Israeli Air Force, it was only the midpoint of their mission. Part 1 of the operation, the precision bombing of Beirut's southern suburbs using Spice 2000 bombs from F-16 Sturm jets, had already unleashed devastation. But now, in Part 2 of this monumental aerial offensive, the IDF's most formidable strike platforms were being called into play: the F-15 IRAM heavy strike fighters. Their mission? To obliterate deeply buried targets, suspected command bunkers, weapons depots, and drone assembly sites embedded beneath reinforced structures in southern Lebanon. At 1842, while the smoke from the first wave still climbed into the Lebanese night, two Israeli F-15 JIRAMs broke from high-altitude airspace over the Mediterranean. Flying at 30,000 feet, each aircraft carried a deadly payload: two GBU-28 bunker buster bombs, each weighing 5,000 pounds. These were no ordinary munitions. Designed during the Gulf War to penetrate Saddam Hussein's underground facilities, the GBU-28s had been updated with Israeli enhancements in targeting, penetration accuracy, and electronic countermeasures. Their objective was a subterranean bunker system believed to be the nerve center of Hezbollah's regional command. The F-15I, a modified version of the American F-15E Strike Eagle, had proven its worth time and time again. But never before had it faced this kind of combat environment: a hybrid mix of dense civilian infrastructure and hardened underground military facilities, all under the umbrella of an eclectic air defense network cobbled together from Chinese, Russian, and Iranian components. Tonight, the RAAMs flew into the heart of that challenge. The Israeli Air Force's Intelligence Directorate had spent weeks assembling a composite picture of the underground facility: signals intelligence, SIGINT, high-resolution satellite imagery, human intelligence from assets embedded in southern Lebanon, and aerial reconnaissance had all contributed to identifying the target site. Buried deep beneath a hillside near the town of Ankara, the installation showed patterns of increased activity: power lines redirected to abandoned fields, trucks entering the compound and exiting empty, and new ventilation shafts hidden under makeshift greenhouses. The F-15Is approached the target from the west, using terrain masking and radar jamming pods to minimize detection. Their onboard electronic warfare suites were programmed to mimic dozens of decoys, appearing on Lebanese radar screens as an entire squadron. This wasn't just stealth by design, it was stealth by deception. Lebanese and Hezbollah radar operators were overwhelmed by ghost signals, chasing targets that didn't exist while the real ones closed in. At 1844, the lead aircraft, call sign Viper 1, began its attack run. Its weapons systems officer in the rear cockpit locked onto the coordinates using the APG-70 radar in synthetic aperture mode. This allowed them to paint a highly detailed ground map even in complete darkness. The GBU-28s remained dormant under the wings, guided by a combination of GPS and inertial navigation system inputs. Their final guidance phase would only begin seconds before impact, when a coded laser designator illuminated the target. Viper 1 released its payload from 35,000 feet, allowing the bombs to build the kinetic energy needed to pierce through up to 30 meters of hardened earth and concrete. The GBU-28s hurtled toward the ground at nearly supersonic speeds. Their hardened steel casings could withstand enormous pressure upon impact, ensuring they would reach the depths of the bunker before detonating. 2 seconds after Viper 1's release, the second F-15I, call sign Viper 2, followed suit. Its bombs were aimed 40 meters south of the first target, designed to collapse the second wing of the underground facility. As the bombs descended, their guidance fins made minute corrections, navigating turbulence, crosswinds, and even GPS spoofing signals emitted from Hezbollah's electronic warfare systems. When Lebanese jammers tried to confuse the bombs with false GPS coordinates, the internal guidance systems kicked in, relying on stored target imagery and motion sensors. At precisely 18:45:17, the first GBU-28 made contact. The impact was barely visible from above, but the explosion underground was catastrophic. Inside the bunker, pressure waves ricocheted off the reinforced walls, collapsing tunnels and shattering concrete walls like brittle glass. The second bomb impacted just 2 seconds later, sending shock waves through the southern corridors of the complex. From the air, the hillside appeared to swell, then collapse inward, creating a crater over 60 meters wide. Secondary explosions followed as munition stockpiles, drone components, and fuel reserves ignited. Flame pillars erupted from subterranean ventilation shafts, turning the once quiet hill into a flaming caldera. Intelligence officers monitoring infrared imagery confirmed multiple hotspots within the crater, indicating the destruction of compartmentalized bunker segments. But the mission wasn't over yet. The Rayams turned back toward Israeli airspace, flying low and fast to avoid retaliatory fire. The jamming pods remained active, sending decoy signals to any radar still functional. Behind them, the smoldering remains of Hezbollah's most protected site told the story. The Israeli Air Force had struck with surgical precision and overwhelming force. As news of the strike broke, global reactions were mixed. In Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the operation as a message to our enemies, while military analysts warned of potential retaliation from Iranian-backed militias. Meanwhile, Lebanon's caretaker government lodged a complaint with the United Nations, calling the strikes a violation of sovereignty and demanding an international inquiry. In Washington, former President Donald Trump, in a now viral Truth Social post, called the attack a masterclass in tactical supremacy, praising the IDF for its incredible use of modern air power. The Biden administration remained cautious in its response, urging both sides to exercise restraint. Hezbollah's response came 14 hours later when multiple rockets were launched toward northern Israel from southern Lebanon. Most were intercepted by the Iron Dome system, but a few managed to strike civilian areas, wounding 6 and causing property damage. Israel responded swiftly, launching another wave of airstrikes on launch sites and suspected Hezbollah command centers. The second wave of Operation Sky Rain had not only decimated a key Hezbollah installation, but also escalated the broader regional conflict. The line between skirmish and all-out war continued to blur, as both sides dug in for what could become a prolonged campaign. As dawn broke over the Mediterranean, Israeli pilots returned to Ramat David Air Base, their mission accomplished. Maintenance crews swarmed the aircraft, assessing battle damage and rearming them for what everyone knew might come next. Because in the shadows of the Levant, peace was always temporary, and tonight, the skies had spoken again. The aftershock, intelligence, reprisals, and a city in smoke. In the immediate aftermath of the precision strikes that leveled key Hezbollah strongholds and suspected Iranian logistical bunkers in Beirut and southern Lebanon, the world watched in stunned silence. Satellite images began to circulate across intelligence channels, showing cratered blocks where once sturdy apartment complexes had stood. The targets had been surgically hit, but the collateral tremors were rippling far beyond concrete and steel. It was now 1846 local time on June 5, 2025. The final detonations of the F-15I Ram delivered GBU-28 bunker busters were still echoing across the valleys of southern Lebanon when Israeli ground and cyber intelligence units kicked into overdrive. Operation Iron Veil's third phase had begun, the phase that would not be visible to the naked eye. Inside a hardened bunker near Tel Aviv, Unit 8200's elite electronic surveillance operators began decrypting intercepted Hezbollah field comms. There was chaos in their ranks. Hezbollah leadership had gone silent. Several command nodes, it appeared, were completely offline, either destroyed, buried, or fried by electromagnetic pulse ripple effects. In a separate war room near Herzliya, Mossad's counterterrorism division was busy flagging secondary targets. Intelligence gathered from the thermal imagery of the first Spice 2000 releases now pointed to mobile missile platforms that had been relocated just days before the strike, possibly in anticipation. These assets were now on the move, hiding in civilian areas. Israel's calculus shifted. The mission wasn't over. In fact, it had just evolved. The third wave was not in the air yet, but its shape was forming in bits and bytes, not bombs. A new flight of armed Hermes 900 drones lifted off from the Negev at 1903. Their mission: loiter, scan, and prosecute. Each drone carried multiple Spike NLOS missiles and real-time, AI-assisted targeting systems, capable of identifying heat signatures even through fog and light rubble. They had no orders to engage until positive ID, but the data feed was constant. The war had entered its most precise phase. Back in Beirut, the chaos had turned to outrage. Lebanese media outlets, some of whom had received Israel's 60-minute evacuation warnings via social platforms, began broadcasting live from the impact zones. Images of fireballs, flattened buildings, and fleeing families were already triggering international responses. The United Nations called for an Emergency Security Council session. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the Zionist aggression and promised that this will not go unanswered. In Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a late-night press conference where he stated, "This was not an attack on Lebanon. This was a surgical operation against the infrastructure of terror that has embedded itself within civilian areas. We will not apologize for defending our people." Behind him stood IDF generals, intelligence chiefs, and defense ministers, silently reinforcing Israel's stance, unapologetic and resolute. But the most revealing moments of the night would come not from spokespeople or missiles, but from intercepted communications. At 1948, Israeli SIGINT picked up a high-frequency encrypted burst, traced to an Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps IRGC transmitter located in eastern Syria. The message, once decrypted, read, "Retaliation underway. Expect strike before dawn." This simple, chilling line set the IDF's entire northern theater on red alert. That alert would prove warranted. At 21:15, two Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles were launched from Hezbollah-controlled zones near Baalbek. Iron Dome interceptors took them down over open fields near Kiryat Shmona. But their launch was a message: Iran and its proxies were not done. Inside the IDF Northern Command Center in Safed, commanders issued new instructions: bolster border air defense batteries, scramble reserve units, and prepare for wave retaliation. Israeli airspace near the Lebanese border was declared a military no-fly zone. Meanwhile, USCENTCOM forces stationed at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar began monitoring the situation closely. Washington had not been notified in advance of the Israeli strikes, and though officials stated they supported Israel's right to self-defense, there was clear tension over the risk of regional escalation. President Trump, speaking at a campaign rally in Texas, said, "Iran has played with fire for too long. If they retaliate further, they will regret it faster than they imagine." As the digital clock in the IDF's war room clicked past 10 p.m., every screen flickered with new activity. Unmanned aerial vehicles launched from Homs, Syria, were headed toward Israeli airspace. Israeli Patriot missile batteries roared to life, and Air Force jets were scrambled once again. The night sky over Galilee became a tapestry of fire, signal jamming, and vapor trails. In the midst of this new aerial chessboard, Israeli public broadcasters aired footage of the earlier F-16 and F-15 missions. The haunting videos of bombs falling, radars lighting up, and explosions ripping through cityscapes were framed as defensive measures, but the real war was now no longer about territory or even retaliation. It was about who could shape the narrative, own the information flow, and weaponize global perception. By midnight, Hezbollah had lost at least 15 command posts and 5 known ammunition depots. Israel's air fleet was back at base, but not at rest. Fighter pilots were on 2-hour rotation standby, and drones patrolled every inch from Haifa to Golan. Lebanon's skies had become a no-man's land, and as the last fireball flickered over Beirut's south, the world held its breath for what sunrise would bring. Aftermath and reckoning, a region on the brink. As dawn broke over Beirut on June 6, 2025, the acrid smoke of the previous night's assault still clung to the skyline. Southern districts of the Lebanese capital, once bustling with Ramadan festivities, now resembled a war zone. Rubble blocked intersections, power lines lay tangled, satellite images revealed vast craters, some over 20 meters wide, where buildings had once stood. But this wasn't just about physical damage. The region itself had fundamentally shifted. In Tel Aviv, the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, released a statement claiming total operational success. They listed 22 confirmed Hezbollah command and logistical facilities destroyed, 3 suspected Iranian-linked underground bunkers obliterated, and over a dozen missile platforms neutralized before they could fire. But even as Israeli officials patted themselves on the back, the political tremors had only just begun. At the United Nations in New York, the Security Council convened in an emergency night session. While the U.S. vetoed any resolution condemning Israel outright, several European allies called for maximum restraint. France, Germany, and even the UK issued unusually sharp statements demanding transparency and an end to the cycle of retaliations. Russia and China, meanwhile, accused Israel of escalating an already unstable region and promised to increase military cooperation with Lebanon and Iran. The Arab League called the attack an unforgivable violation of Lebanese sovereignty. Protesters poured into the streets in Amman, Cairo, and Baghdad, waving Hezbollah and Palestinian flags. Chants of "Death to America" and "Jerusalem is ours" echoed through the capitals. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei issued a defiant statement. The Zionist regime will not sleep peacefully again. The countdown has begun. Back in Beirut, however, not everyone was so quick to support Hezbollah. Civilians interviewed by independent reporters blamed the group for embedding military infrastructure in residential areas. "We never asked for this war," one resident of Dahieh told a French news outlet. We paid the price for secrets hidden beneath our homes.
The true shock came hours later when Hezbollah's official channel aired footage showing the remains of one of its key command centers, now reduced to a smoking hole. In a rare moment of vulnerability, the group admitted that senior operatives had been lost and that a temporary command blackout had occurred. For the first time in years, Israel's most elusive enemy looked shaken. Meanwhile, intelligence analysts at NATO were poring over the details of the raid. The unprecedented use of Rafael Spice 2000 and GBU-28s, combined with real-time social media warnings, represented a new kind of warfare, one where legality, public perception, and surgical precision coalesced. Some compared it to the first Gulf War's shock and awe, only far more selective and data-driven. At Ramstein Air Base in Germany, U.S. military analysts reviewed the operation with concern. We're entering an era where urban warfare and AI-driven precision strikes become the norm, one officer said, and if we don't keep pace, we'll be spectators in a game we used to dominate. In Washington, President Donald Trump issued a late-night video statement from the Oval Office. Against an American flag backdrop, he spoke with steely confidence. What Israel did tonight was not aggression, it was a warning. A warning to those who think they can hide behind civilians and attack democracy. We stand by Israel. And if anyone thinks they can retaliate, we're watching and we're ready. Back in the Middle East, a different kind of retaliation was already unfolding. At 11:15 a.m., cyber experts in Tel Aviv confirmed a massive phishing attack targeting Israeli infrastructure, believed to originate from Tehran. While most systems remained unaffected, several government databases experienced minor outages. Israel's Cyber Defense Authority blamed Iranian state actors. Simultaneously, a long-range rocket was launched from the Syrian Golan Heights. It landed in open ground outside Katzrin, causing no damage. Israel responded minutes later with an airstrike on the launch site, a remote position manned by Iranian Quds Force elements. The exchange was swift and controlled, but it was a signal that the game had entered a new phase. Then at 3 p.m., a drone swarm crossed from Iraq into Jordan. Though intercepted before reaching Israeli airspace, their origin, traced back to a newly formed militia, calling itself Al-Muqawama Ash-Shamia, suggested that Iran was activating dormant proxies across the region. Jordan's King Abdullah immediately raised national alert levels and appealed for calm, warning against dragging his country into a war we cannot afford. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati appeared live on local television, visibly distraught. "This is a national tragedy," he said. "We urge Hezbollah to cease all military actions from Lebanese soil. Our people cannot be sacrificed for regional agendas." His voice cracked, a rare sign of emotional strain in Lebanese politics. By nightfall, the Mediterranean skies were calmer. No new missiles, no new airstrikes. But silence does not always mean peace. Inside underground bunkers from Tehran to Jerusalem, war planners continued drawing new maps, estimating damage, and anticipating the next moves. Israel had proven that it could strike with deadly accuracy, even deep inside hostile territory, and even under the watchful eyes of the world. Hezbollah had lost key infrastructure and possibly its aura of invincibility, but Iran had not yet truly answered. The game was paused, not ended. As June 7th approached, a strange quiet fell over the region. A quiet so heavy it felt like a prelude, a breathing space between acts. And everyone, soldiers, civilians, leaders, held their breath, waiting for Act 2.